welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 58 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we're discussing chapter 57 of A Game of Thrones, the Sansa 5.
So here's the plan. We're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, if we do our job right, we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We will summarise what has happened, we'll discuss our thoughts on it, provide you some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide you some additional information about the characters and other things in this chapter, which will help you in particular if you're not reading along with us.
Yes, sir.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. The weather is fantastic, huh?
Oh yeah. This is. I was telling my son that September is the best month in this part of the world.
Yeah.
But
last year was pretty brutal still in September, but this year
was it?
Yeah, we were still hitting 100 into October last year, which was pretty crazy.
Yow.
Yeah. But
I wonder if it's because no one's driving anywhere.
Oh, maybe. Hadn't thought of that. But it's been glorious out there. So, of course, we trapped ourselves inside for an hour or so to do this. But duty calls.
Yes. The English soccer season has started. It's got me all excited.
Oh, yes. Oldham is, how are they faring?
2 games, no goals, 2 defeats.
But they beat the Imps, didn't they?
In a preseason friendly. It
doesn't
count for anything. Yeah.
Shoot. I remember you saying
exactly.
that they beat the Imps.
They did beat the Imps.
I didn't know it didn't count.
You know, the secret to beating the Imps is the high ball. Just they're so wee.
Just get it off the ground and you're golden, really.
Exactly.
Anything new?
I don't have much. No, nothing really. We're working too hard, McKelly. I know that.
Yeah, we sure are. Whew.
Our jobs. Filling up our time.
I know. It's never good when your day job prevents you from preparing for your podcast time.
Exactly.
Tell you what.
Exactly.
We were throwing this thing together at the last minute here.
Don't tell them that.
They might figure it out.
That reminds me of, funnily enough, just before we started, I was talking about Billy Connolly.
You were,
Scottish comedian.
Indeed.
And he was talking about the fact that he has heard that the Queen of England believes that the world smells of paint. Because wherever she goes, 20 feet in front of her, there's always some guy just painting like crazy, getting everything ready for her. So she thinks the world smells like paint.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And that's how we're writing this episode.
That's right. Minutes before
whoever's
we're
not
on
talking, whoever's not speaking is writing in the last bit.
Well, yeah.
All right, but despite that, we have got a lot of notes, so let's get down to business with a quick recap of what Sansa was up to last time we saw her. Last we saw of Sansa, she had run to the Queen and spilled the beans about Ned's plan to shuttle the girls out of King's Landing on a ship back to the safety of Winterfell. For the next 3 days, she was holed up in a room at the top of a tower in Maegor's Holdfast with her hysterical friend Jane Poole. She was then taken to Queen Cersei and the Small Council, where they thoroughly manipulated her, using marrying Joffrey as the dangling carrot into accepting that her father had indeed committed treason. She agreed to write letters to her family asking that they come to King's Landing to pledge fealty to Joffrey. Unfortunately, it wasn't until late that night she realised she'd forgotten to ask about her sister Arya. Oh, and Jane had been taken away to her father via Peter Baelish. Let the old gods and the new help her.
Yes, so it says Sansa that she's being taken to her father.
Yes, that's what she was told was happening to Jane. Right, why don't we give them the summary of this chapter?
Did I say Sansa again when I meant Cersei? Just a second ago.
Yeah, but I think our listeners have just come to interpret this from now, I don't bother correcting you anymore.
When I say Sansa or Cersei, I mean the right one. Whichever.
You mean the other one?
Yes. Yeah. Whichever one fits is the one I mean. This chapter. These Sansa chapters are really trouble for me.
Yeah. Especially because she keeps interacting with Cersei.
Yes,
that's really throwing you off.
Exactly.
Yeah? The one who is being manipulated is Sansa. The one doing the manipulating is Cersei.
Right. So fit it whichever way it fits best.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so here comes the summary. So Sansa is attending King Joffrey's first court session of his young reign. It's obvious from first glance that Robert is no longer in charge. All of his hunting tapestries have been removed and unceremoniously dumped in a heap. Sansa has been given freedom of the castle by Queen Cersei, as long as she doesn't try to escape. And that's a promise Sansa was happy to make, as she has no clue where she'd go, even if she did escape.
She's no Arya.
Right.
And a pedantry here. Does his reign start as soon as his father dies, or does it have to wait for his coronation?
Yeah, I would have thought it had to wait for his coronation, but what do I know?
Okay. The throne room is near empty compared to the usual crowd on hand for Robert's court sessions. Only about 20 or so lords and no small folk are in attendance. Despite all the elbow room, nobody seems to notice Sansa's presence. They're all too busy looking at their hands, looking at the floor, looking anywhere but making eye contact with Sansa.
The royals are announced as they enter the throne room. King Joffrey, hailed as King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, and Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Queen Cersei as the Protector of the Realm and Light of the West. The new king sits his throne, finds Sansa and smiles. The move gives her confidence for what she plans to do. Joff is resplendent in crimson and gold.
A whole slew of people are charged with coming to King's Landing to swear fealty. Tywin Lannister is named Hand of the King. Janos Slynt, commander of the Gold Cloaks, is elevated not only to Lord of Harrenhal, but given a seat on the small council.
Moving on up.
This causes some muttering. He is a low-born son of a butcher. Cersei, as regent, is also given a seat at that table. The small council one, not the butcher's.
That's better. Cersei asks Barristan Selmy to step forward. She tells him that it's time to set aside his burden. He's angry, even more so when he hears that Jaime Lannister will succeed him as Lord Commander. He unclasps the trappings of his office and lets them drop to the floor. He draws his sword, and everyone gasps. But he reassures them that, while he could cut his way through the remaining five members of the Kingsguard before him, he has given his sword to Joffrey.
Melt it down and add it to the others. Perhaps Lord Stannis will sit on it when he takes your throne. He leaves in quite the huff. The Stannis comment is too much for Joffrey, and he orders Slynt to have Selmy seized and questioned. The Kingsguard is now one short, and Joff is very pleased to have his mother announce that Sandor Clegane will become the 7th member. The Hound accepts, but refuses to be knighted, normally a precondition. Boros Blunt, one of the Kingsguard, protests. The Hound, every bit as blunt, refuses, and Sir Boros backs down.
I see what you did there.
You like that, didn't you?
Yeah,
I could tell.
Well done.
Yeah.
The moment has come, and Sansa steps forward. The king smiles and gives her courage. She pleads for mercy for Ned, her father. Cersei, Pycelle, Baelish all lay into her, but Joffrey wants to hear more. She speaks of Ned's love for Robert, the milk of the poppy that was being administered, the probable lies of Renly or Stannis.
Varys seeks conciliation. Cersei smells an opportunity. If he were to confess his crime, we would know he had repented his folly. And Joffrey gives in. Your sweet words have moved me, but he must confess and say I am king, or there will be no mercy for him. He will, assures Sansa.
She sounds confident.
Yeah, I think she's trying to convince herself that she convince her father to do that very un-Ned Stark thing.
It is indeed.
Bearing false witness against himself.
Yes. Remember that thing I said earlier? I was totally wrong about that.
Yeah. I must have been high on milk of the poppy.
That's what it was. Milk of the poppy.
So, just before we sort of start on sort of the general things, I think it's interesting that Robert's hunting tapestries have been removed. I mean, they seem like you go to places, you go to castles around the world, and they're really into these hunting tapestries, and they're not particularly pleasant. But I guess they were nice back in the day. And Joffrey doesn't like living things. He likes killing things. You'd think hunting tapestries would be right up his street.
Good point.
But they are his father's. They are the tapestries of the Baratheons.
Yeah.
And so they have been unceremoniously removed and dumped on the floor.
He's still supposed to be a Baratheon, right? Like, everybody is still supposed to be believing, but it appears like that's where his king heritage comes from, is that he is the son of Robert Baratheon, but his appearance, like what he's wearing Lannister colors in this chapter, and all of the Baratheon tapestries have been dumped. They're not selling this whole I'm a Baratheon thing very well.
And the kicker of it is that he himself has some questions. At various points he's been like, why did he say that? Why are people saying these things? He's concerned.
Right.
Everything that they're doing would only fuel those fires.
Yeah.
Would only sort of, make him think, you know what, there might be something to this. Yeah. They really are denying my fatherhood here.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that, but yeah. I never think about it from his perspective, but you're right. He's assuming that he is his father's son.
Of course.
And he's been hearing that he's not, and he doesn't want to believe it. But then they're certainly not doing a whole lot to help him believe this.
Right. You are your father's son. Look, see this photo of him? That's what a son would do to his father's photo when he dies.
Right, that's how it's supposed to go. Yeah. Also, there's at the very beginning of the chapter when Sansa's talking about how she was more than happy to accept the caveat that she's got freedom of the castle as long as she doesn't try to escape, because she has absolutely no idea how to escape or where she would go if she did escape. And it just, once again, is, I wanted to say stark contrast, but that seemed too easy.
Yeah, no, I think you should.
There's a very obvious contrast between her and Arya, as, Sansa accepts that there's no way out of the Red Keep, and even if she did, she'd have nowhere to go. Whereas Arya would do whatever she needed to do to break free and just kind of figure it out when she got out there. Not necessarily one better than the other. They're just very different approaches to the predicament.
Yeah, I mean, Sansa's just not equipped. I mean, you'd hate to see her thrown out on the road.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Arya, she's in the wind somewhere, but honestly, I think she's going to, I know she's going to have some trials and tribulations, but I trust her to get through them because she's feisty, because she's got backbone.
She's crafty.
Sansa just couldn't do it.
Scrappy, all the things she's going to need.
Yeah. So there are maybe only 20 lords there, and normally there'd be 100 there, but I guess, the realm is in turmoil. A lot of lords are off fighting one way or the other, and those who aren't are probably going back home to sort of shore up their defenses for whatever's coming.
Right. So
the place is somewhat deserted.
Yeah.
The absence of small folk is interesting, though. I don't know why that would be.
Yeah. I was thinking, the lords that Sansa mentions at the beginning of this chapter, they all make sense to be there because none of them are Riverland, Northern, or Westermen. So none of them are directly currently impacted by the fighting. So it makes sense that they're there. But yeah, it would also make sense that if you're a Westerman, if you're a lord from the West, from the Riverlands, or from the North, you might be otherwise preoccupied. But yeah, you're right. I don't know necessarily why no small folk would want to be there. You would think it's something new. It's a new king. You want to go see what's going on.
But I wonder if they're not invited. They weren't welcomed.
Oh, yeah, that could be.
Robert perhaps tried to be more of a man of the people. Failed, but tried.
So there's a few, for the next few minutes, we're basically just going to be going through people, I think. Reminding
yes, this is an episode of lists.
So when she's making her way through all the lords, and all the lords are way too busy staring at the floor of their hands to make eye contact with her.
This is the list of lords who threw Sansa shade, basically.
Yes, exactly. She mentions Jalabar Zo, which is one of my favorite names in the series. He is the Summer Islander. He's the exiled prince, and he's in King's Landing. He was in King's Landing to ask Robert for gold and swords to help him reclaim his land. Then we got Aaron Santagar.
It's going to be a while before Joffrey is in a position to fulfill Jalabar Show's request.
Yes.
He cannot afford to send any men off on traipsy missions to the Summer Islands.
Not right now.
Busy times in Westeros.
Yeah, in time. Maybe in time. But then we got Aaron Santagar. He's the Master of Arms at the Red Keep. And if you remember, he is the man that Cat and Sir Roderick Pycelle came to King's Landing to ask about the dagger.
I do remember. Well done.
Then we get the Red Wine twins, who she refers to as Horror and Slobber. That is not their real names.
That's not their given names. I did wonder about that.
Their real names are Horus and Hobber. And they happen to be in King's Landing for the Hands Tourney, and so I guess they've stuck around since then.
How long ago is that now? It seems like quite a while.
It does seem like quite a while ago. I'm not sure as far as timeline, but it's
got to be at least 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, I would think so. Things did move pretty quick, but they don't Martin doesn't always give you like a specific timeline. 2 weeks later, this happened, so it's kind of hard to tell at times.
Are they the eldest sons of the Red Wines? Do you happen to know?
So Horus is the heir by probably a few minutes, and then they've got a younger sister, Desmira.
Desmira, yeah.
So then we've got what she refers to as sickly Lord Giles, and Lord Giles is Lord Giles Rosby. He's a rich lord of a keep called Rosby, and he that is located in the Crown's Land, which is very near King's Landing. So I guess he just popped down to check out the new king. And then she refers to funny, drunken Ser Dontos, and that is Ser Dontos Hollard. He is also a knight from the Crown Lands. And
you think at least drunken Ser Dontos would have not looked away, but even he was sober enough to look away from Sansa.
Well, she said that he tried to hail her, but then Sir Balin Swan whispered in his ear, and he was like,
"Ah, that's right, yeah."
He was like, "Oh yeah."
The drink has made me forget myself.
And that brings us to Sir Balin Swan. He's the last lord that. Well, he's not a lord; he's a knight technically, but the last person that she mentions, and he is from the Dornish Marches. And if you recall, he finished in the top 3 in the Hands Tourney in archery. He's a pretty solid archer. He was also on the hunt with King Robert, and this happened quickly, but Littlefinger mentions him as one of the several possibilities for allies in King's Landing for Ned against Cersei.
Oh, interesting.
He was saying,
I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the ones he mentioned. But Ned chose the gold cloaks wisely.
Right. Weren't the people of the Marches all renowned for their archery? Wasn't that like a general? Yeah.
It is something they're known for. Anguy, the archer who won the tournament, is also from the Dornish Marches.
There you go. Maybe that's who I was thinking this was, actually. Yeah, maybe I was thinking about him. So now list number 2 is the list of people who are being told they have to come to King's Landing to pledge their fealty to Joffrey. And this is a longer list.
Yeah, I think Sansa says the list is so long it'll take an entire flock of ravens to get these messages out.
So first of all, Stannis and his family, wife and daughter, all have to come. And that makes sense. They have some kind of... Rumor has it that they've made a claim to the throne.
Right.
Well, you come and pledge fealty, you're giving up that claim, whatever it was.
Yes.
Renly Baratheon, we don't quite know what Renly's done to offend, but he did run away.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like Joffrey very much, it seems.
Seems like it must be enough. Enough of a crime.
Loras Tyrell is the next one called, and I found that one a little bit curious. Why is he being called specifically? Because the next person they call is Mace Tyrell, his father, and his family. But Loras got called out individually.
I think Loras gets called out because it's rumored that he and Renly fled together. And the timing, right as Robert was dying, I guess the timing must make the small council or the Lannisters nervous.
Yeah. So Mace Tyrell and brothers, uncles, and sons is a bit heavy-handed, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we've talked several times about how the Tyrells, who we've barely met, we've only met Sir Loras and we don't know much about him, could be the key to the kingdom because they're the most powerful family who don't seem to have an axe to grind. So having them as an ally seems to be the most important thing. Dragging them from their keep to pledge fealty seems a bit undiplomatic.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I guess maybe he just wants to shore up their allegiance, So
maybe he forces them to come, but then he treats them like royalty when they get there, kind of thing.
Maybe. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. I do think, actually, though, that it is perhaps thematic throughout the book that when Cersei does things, she is a little heavy-handed with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think this is perhaps another example. Both Lords Royce and their sons, so that's Jon and Nestor, Bronze Jon and Nestor Royce. If you remember, Jon was in King's Landing for the tourney, and he and one of his sons went hunting with the king.
Yeah. And then Ned sent Robar to go with the message of what Gregor was doing and the sentence he had laid down about, Gregor being desummited. And he sent Robar with that message to go find the king and give it to him. And I guess it makes sense only that the Royces are a powerful house of the Vale. Like, between the two of them, they're probably just right underneath.
We did meet Nestor Royce too, right? We met Nestor Royce in the Vale as well,
yes.
Didn't we? When okay.
Yes, his current seat is the Gates of the Moon at the foot of the Giant's Lance.
That's right. And so it does seem strange to call them out before you call out the Aryans, but they did.
Good point.
Not going to ask why, but they did. So then he gets on to Thoros of Myr and Beric Dondarrion. If you remember, those are two of the people who are part of the group that was sent by Ned to bring back Gregor Clegane's head.
Yeah.
For his crimes against the Riverlands. So those two are still loose in the Riverlands causing mischief, and they've been told to come back as well.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd do that if I were them.
No. Well, but again, I mean, where are they? I mean, they're there with a very small group. I mean, it was 100 to start with, and it sounds like it's had some losses.
Yes, it does.
And they're detached from everybody else, and you might be better off going back to King's Landing and saying, hey, I was just following the instructions of the last king.
Yeah.
Don't blame me.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I guess so.
Because what's in it for them now? Maybe they haven't even heard that Robert's dead. Maybe they're still fulfilling their mission.
That's possible.
The war's been over 20 years and they're still fighting.
Yeah, you don't imagine that Gregor was calling out, "Robert's dead!"
Yeah, yes. Leave me alone. So next on the list are Lysa and Robert Arryn. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say they ain't coming.
What would give you that idea?
I mean, they won't leave the Vale for anything. Least of all being summoned somewhere.
No, I think you might be right there.
Yeah. Next is Hoster, Edmure, and Brynden Tully, and I'm pretty sure they're not coming. Why would you leave your besieged home to pledge fealty to the family who are besieging you?
Yeah, and if we think about them individually, Edmure is currently captive of Jaime Lannister. Hoster,
that's right,
we believe to be affirmed and bedridden, possibly, and Brynden is literally with Cat and Robb. Yeah. So, yeah, not likely to be the first to arrive to pledge their fealty.
Yeah. Jason Mallister of Seaguard, who, along with the Freys, are the last remaining holdouts of the major families in the Riverlands.
Yeah.
Bryce Caron of the Marches. Tell me about Bryce Caron of the Marches.
So he's the Lord of Night Song, and he owes fealty to the Baratheons. So, at some level, I guess it makes sense. But he was in King's Landing for the Hand's tourney, and he seems to have disappeared because he's not here. So maybe he left along with Renly, since he does owe fealty to the Baratheons.
So basically, anyone who left around the same time as Renly is being lumped in as being in league with Renly and therefore opposed to Joffrey.
Yes, even though, like you said, Renly's not necessarily done anything wrong other than get out of Dodge. So then we get Titus Blackwood. He's the Lord of Raventree Hall, and if you recall, he came up last chapter, with the Tyrion chapter, because after Jaime defeated the army at River Run and captured Edmure, it was Titus that led the remnants of the army into River Run, and then Raventree Hall fell to the Lannisters because Titus wasn't there. It was probably no lord and very few men to defend the castle.
So next on the list was Walder Frey and his heir Sestevron. I found that one interesting, actually, because it's just Lord Frey and his heir. Many of the others, it was like them and all their family. But Walder Frey's family is so huge, the king doesn't apparently want them all. Just him and his heir, nobody else.
Yeah, Red Keep's big, but maybe not big enough to hold all the Freys.
And of course, that one's an interesting one because everybody knows that Frey's loyalty is up for grabs, and so again, perhaps a little heavy-handed of Cersei, but which way the Freys go could be a big difference maker here.
Especially if they go before or after Robb crosses the Green Fork at the Twins. Robb had better hope that Walder Frey doesn't go swear fealty, or that could put
the worst outcome for Robb could be that they let them cross and then don't let them back if they have to retreat hastily.
Oh, yeah.
So that they're trapped. If they find themselves outmatched by Jaime's army, and they try to retreat back through the Twins, that could be a real trap for them.
Right.
So next was Carol Vance, who we've talked about before. He's openly fighting the Lannisters in the Riverlands. His father was killed at the Golden Tooth.
Then we've got Jonas Bracken, who Kevin Lannister mentioned last chapter. He told Tyrion that Gregor had burnt them out. So the Brackens, that is.
So from the Riverlands.
Yeah, burn out their keep.
Yeah, Shella Went recently defeated Lady of Harrenhal, now homeless because Janos Slynt was given Harrenhal. So we'll get back to that one in pedantry.
Yes.
Then Doran Martell and his sons are called. We know why this is, because from the start of the book we've heard about the murder of Elia Martell and her 2 children, who were Rhaegar Targaryen's children, and how the Martells have had an axe to grind against the Lannisters ever since.
Yeah.
Well, the Lannisters are in charge now, and they want to see some fealty from these people.
Right, yeah. I mean, as long as Robert was reigning as king, he could say, hey, I didn't have any control over it. I wasn't there. I showed up and that had happened because it was Tywin Lannister that allowed the atrocity to be committed. But it's not Robert in charge anymore. It's Cersei, who's the Queen Regent, and she is directly the daughter of Tywin. So,
yeah. And lastly on this list are Catelyn Stark, Robb Stark, Brandon Stark, Arya Stark, and Rickon Stark. And of all the people to not forget Rickon, he's on this list. But you see, for me, there's a real scariness to that complete list, because if it was just Cat and Robb, that'd be one thing, but they could wipe out the Starks here, if they came down.
Right.
And that feels like that's the threat of including every one of them.
Right, yeah. What's the point of bringing 3-year-old Rickon? I mean, I know he is almost 4 and he is a Stark, so
True.
He should be leading a host to war anytime soon. But it does seem a little heavy-handed to ask for Bran, Arya, and Rickon to come pledge fealty there. 10 and under.
So all of the Kingsguard apart from Jaime are there, which means that Syrio Forel did not escape his fight. We would assume.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well for old Syrio. He wouldn't he wouldn't have fled with Arya, so it seems unlikely that as the fight was going on, he was like, "I'm out of here," and just ran away. So that doesn't bode well.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Joffrey's outfit is very Lannister looking, and the Baratheon emblems are being diminished and ignored.
Yeah, it just, it's like you said, it's a heavy-handed decision to so clearly be portraying him as a Lannister. And I wondered when I read that part if the Lannister-centric nature that they are portraying here might lend some credence to Ned's claim.
Well, exactly. Particularly in the eyes of Joffrey Baratheon.
That's right, yeah.
That's the one.
I was thinking in the eyes of the other lords, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but absolutely in the eyes of the lords as well. But they've got time. He's a young king.
Yeah.
He's got forever. He could, 30 years from now, he could change his name to Lannister and no one would even remember that there was any controversy.
Right.
But by stripping all of the the stags down and replacing them with lions right now, you fuel the fire of the accusation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I've got visions of how this chapter ends, of Ned being dragged up here in chains and being said, well, come on, now apologise for accusation. And he looks around at, like, gold, red, lions. He's like, what do you want me to say?
Are you seeing what I'm seeing, people? Literally, the members of the Kingsguard are wearing lion brooches. So you may have noticed when they announced Cersei and Joffrey that Joffrey got the King of the Andals, Rhoynar, First Men, and Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, but Cersei got the Protector of the Realm title. And that's often given to the regent or hand of the king when the king isn't up to the task of being the supreme military leader of the Seven Kingdoms, either too young or sometimes if the king is incapacitated. But she was also announced with the title Light of the West, which, as best I can tell, was a totally made-up title that she just gave herself at the spur of the moment, because that title I could not find any other reference to Light of the West. So I think she was like, you know what? I'm going to throw that in there too.
Yeah, why not? And most attractive lady 2024.
Right.
We don't know whether Sansa's been asking about Arya, but hearing Arya's name read out surprises her, like she didn't know that she'd escaped. I mean, this is clear evidence, because Sansa's name wasn't on the list.
Right.
But Arya's was, which suggests they don't have Arya in their clutches.
Yeah.
And so, but she didn't know this, so she clearly didn't know this because hearing the name surprised her.
Yeah.
But where she thought she was, if she hadn't escaped, then I don't know.
That's what I wondered. Did she think, oh, she's just in another tower in the Red Keep? I just haven't come across her yet. You know?
Yeah. Or maybe dead. I mean, maybe she thought she'd been killed.
True, she did. Her reaction was of, quite surprise and shock. She didn't say specifically why she was so surprised. So maybe she is relieved to hear that she's alive.
Yeah.
She assumes she's now safe in Winterfell, that she caught the ship.
Yeah.
But we know that has not happened yet, anyway.
Yeah. So Tywin's made Hand of the King, which proved Tyrion to be prophetic last week when he called Tywin once and future Hand of the King.
Yep.
Of course, I mean, it was all written by George Martin. He knew.
He did. And
Tyrion is not actually a magician.
And so now Cersei's been added to the small council. So, as we know, we mentioned in the summary, we haven't discussed it here yet, but so we've got Cersei added, Selmy subtracted, Slynt added. So now we've Ned
and Tywin added.
Yeah,
and Tywin added once he joins
and
them.
Ned and Stannis both removed. So basically, any moral compass left in the small council has been removed.
Yeah, I mean, this chapter, I think, for the first time, showed Varys really trying to fight against the tide of horribleness.
Yeah.
Because several times he interrupted the sort of flow against the people with a conciliatory comment. You know?
Yeah, you're right.
And so he maybe is the last hope for the small council. Because Baelish is just kowtowing to them, and Pycelle is worse than ever.
Yeah. I think Baelish is playing his own game and just hasn't revealed it yet. But I do think Pycelle just is clueless to anything that's going on and just goes with whatever the Lannisters, whichever direction the Lannister wind is blowing at the moment. So, but like I said, Janos Slynt, not only was he added to the small council, but as Simon mentioned in the summary, he was also raised to Lord of a very important castle, one that we're rather fond of, Harrenhal.
So wait, we owe fealty to Janos Slynt.
I know, this can't be.
Back to loser here.
So he's raised to Lord of a very important castle and added to as a member of the small council. And so I was like, so much for Ned's 5,000 gold dragons.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite balance out.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's like if you win the lottery. Do you want the big money now, or do you want like a regular payment every year?
True. Yeah.
That's kind of what he's gone for the regular payment here. I mean, 5,000 gold dragons, he's pretty much set for life. And he could stay on in King's Landing where it's nice and warm,
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, he did. He went for the long-term wealth versus the upfront cash. Yeah.
And the thing is, if you could retire there and go and live on, but he's still in charge of the gold cloaks. He hasn't lost his day job, and now he's got all this worry. Now he's I'm lord of this whole estate. Dang it!
The largest castle in all of Westeros. How am I supposed to heat it? Now I need 5,000 gold dragons.
I start cleaning at one end. At the end of the year, I'm back where I started from, and I start again.
Yeah.
So as we heard last week, Lady Went was removed from Harrenhal. She didn't put up much of a fight.
She didn't have enough men to put up a fight in that castle.
Yeah. You don't have enough men to defend the walls. Never mind, put up a fight.
So as Slynt's name is called out that he has been raised to Lord of Harrenhal, and that he's been added as a member to the small council, you can kind of hear some boos, jeers from the crowd of lords and knights in the room. And so obviously that's not sitting very well with these lords at court, and it's probably not going to sit very well with the rest of the lords of the Seven Kingdoms, as the word spreads that, this guy's been not just raised to some obscure holdfast or small castle or something, but to the Lord of Harrenhal, which is, like I just mentioned, is the largest castle in all of the Seven Kingdoms.
But it also puts down a marker. It's like saying, if you're loyal to us, it doesn't matter how low born you are, you can go high.
Yes.
And no matter how high you're born, if you're disloyal to us, we will strike you low. So,
Yeah, you're right. It does send a message. It's good. It sends a very clear message. You're right. Yeah.
So it is prestigious. It's the largest castle, as we've said, and it does have large tracts of fertile land. But meanwhile, Tywin is burning all those lands, so, they might want to communicate with one another.
Good point, yeah.
Janos Slynt takes his gold cloaks north to fight Tywin.
Yeah, it had fertile tracts of land a few weeks ago. I'm not quite so sure.
Land made fertile by the occasional fire.
Yeah. But the castle is also thought to be cursed. House Slynt makes the 10th Lord of Harrenhal, and it's only been around for 300 years. I mean, that's a lot in the short amount of time.
That's a lot, yes. Yeah.
In those 300 years, we've had House Hor, House Coheres, House Harroway, House Towers, Rhaena Targaryen lived at Harrenhal for a while, House Strong, Alice Rivers called Harrenhal home for a while, House Lothston, House Went, and now House Slynt. So that's a lot. And I wondered if maybe that's kind of what they were banking on. Maybe they were banking on this not sticking. So why not give him the title and the spot on the small council? Because, like I said, I've said it several times, it's the largest castle in all of Westeros. How the heck is he going to man it and keep it up and running? Obviously, Lady Went, she's held it for years. She hasn't been able to, wasn't able to man it well enough to prevent the army from taking it over.
Yep. Okay, well, we have our new lord. So Selmy's dismissal is terribly hard to watch. She's so honourable and loyal, and it's done in public and done harshly.
Yeah. We'll someday hear about the defiance of Duskendale and Selmy's part in it, and just how the guy's like a national treasure. I mean, when we get to background, you also hear some of the things that he's done. He just deserved better than this. He's truly a great knight. He's right up there with some of the best.
But he was Kingsguard to Aerys Targaryen, and Aerys Targaryen was awful, and he did nothing against it. Now there's a debate here to be had, because both he and Jaime Lannister took an oath to protect that king. But if that king is mad and awful, should you do what Jaime Lannister did, or should you do what Barristan Selmy did?
Yeah.
I don't think it's black and white. In fact, if anything, I would lean towards Jaime as doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Break your oath for the good of the world.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I agree. He sat by and watched the Mad King do some pretty horrific things, and we just referred to how honorable he was. And yeah, that's very contradictory, because he's honorable in living up to the vow that he took.
Right.
And he generally makes very honorable decisions, but he takes his vow so seriously that he was allowing all these atrocities to happen and not saying anything about it or doing anything about it. So
yeah. And in some ways you're kind of hiding behind your vow when you do that. The vow is specifically to protect the king, but the vow implicitly is to protect the realm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're hiding behind the words of the vow to protect you from the more complicated moral decision of the spirit of the vow.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. I absolutely see what you're saying.
But I agree. He was a very honorable man and deserved a lot better than this.
Yeah. Now I think I mentioned this. I couldn't remember when, and I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it. I'm pretty sure I mentioned before that no Lord Commander of the Kingsguard had been removed from duty aside from dying. So he is the first Lord Commander to be removed while still alive.
That to me seems very strange, because, I mean, surely not all of them die in the line of duty.
Right, yeah.
Which means they die of old age. I mean, like,
doddering old.
Exactly. At some point, I mean, I think it's too soon for Barristan Selmy, but there must be a point at which you go, you know what? Not sure you're up to the job anymore.
That is a good point.
Well, lift the sword. Go on, lift it. Show me.
It's how they make it seem. It's how both, especially Joffrey says, you're too old to protect anyone, which is absolutely not true. But I also thought, all of the previous hands of the king were under Targaryen reign. So, this is new leadership, and this is how they do things. Once you reach a certain age, boom, we'll replace you. But of course, it's not why they did not replace him because he was too old. But we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, Selmy says that only death can relieve him of his duty as Lord Commander, but Cersei makes the quite clever quip of yours or your king's.
Yeah, I'll give her that one.
They do a quick head count, and he has served 3 now dead kings.
She says that, and the crowd went ooh.
Yeah. Burn.
Yeah, and Littlefinger says I've served under 3 kings, and Littlefinger says all dead, which is incredibly unfair because Jaehaerys was sickly and died of illness at age 37. Aerys, Jaime friggin' Lannister of the Kingsguard, killed him, and King Robert commanded him and all the rest to stand back while he took this boron mano a mano. So none of them were really can be blamed on Ser Barristan here.
Yeah. If I were Barristan, I would say, okay, yes, 3. But Jaime, how many of them did I kill?
Right.
Jaime.
I'm 0 for 3. Jaime, she's 1 for 2.
1 for 2. 1 for 2.
50% of the kings he swore to protect, he killed himself. Yeah. So Selmy mentions that he gave up the claim to his ancestral keep, and that the girl he was to marry married his cousin instead. Now, I couldn't find the girl or the cousin, but he was the first son of Sir Lionel Selmy, the Knight of Harvest Hall, which is the name for the name given to the head of House Selmy. So he gave up being the Knight of Harvest Hall to be a member of the Kingsguard. Now, like I said a minute ago, they did not boot him from this position because he was too old. I mean, he finished, I think, like in the top 5 or so in the tourney, the Hands tourney, just a few weeks ago. They did this so that Jaime could have his title, and so that the Hound could have Jaime's old job as a member of the Kingsguard. That certainly makes a lot more sense than blaming
and
Robert's death on Barristan.
And that's one more Lannister on the small council, right? Because the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard is on the small council. So that's Jaime, Cersei, Tywin, all on the small council.
Yeah, and one more morally corrupt member in this whole thing, adding the Hound to the Kingsguard. We don't know a lot about the Hound, but he did threaten to kill a 12-year-old if she, or 13, however old Sansa is these days, if she mentioned what he told her.
As a parent of a teenager, I cannot throw stones.
Good point. But he did kill Micah. He outright killed Micah.
That is all him. I am innocent. So Tywin does offer Selmy some seaside land near Lannisport as a retirement home, but Barristan doesn't like that idea. It's a hall to die in and men to bury him, is what he thinks of it as. They tell him that Jaime's going to be the new Lord Commander, and then you hear what Barristan Selmy thinks of Jaime Lannister, which obviously he's kept under his hat these last 18 years, because
I thought that
describes him as a false knight who profaned his blade with the blood of the king he'd sworn to defend. So.
Yeah, there's a pretty strong feeling. He still has to work with this guy, or up to this point, still had to work with this guy. And I was thinking, I bet meals around the White Sword Tower were awfully interesting.
Every time Jaime reaches for a knife, he puts a spoon there instead,
I was a little bit surprised how well the Lannisters took Selmy's harsh words. He called Joff boy, and then he said, he pulls out his sword and says, "Here, take this, melt it down, and put it with the rest, because the Iron Throne is made of swords." And he says, "Maybe Stannis will sit on it when he takes your throne."
Yeah, he actually says, as he pulls the sword, all of the Kingsguard draw their swords in case he's about to attack the king. And he sort of snorts in derision at them. He's like, "I could cut through all 5 of you as easy as I could cut through a cake."
Yeah.
And then he said, and that's what he says, "Here, melt it down and add it to the rest. It'll serve you better than these guys will, than their swords."
Right,
will.
Yeah.
Maybe Stannis will pierce himself with it when he sits on the throne.
Yeah, I think maybe everyone was a little too stunned to react, or a little too intimidated, because he's still Barristan Selmy,
Exactly. No one's like,
"I'm not moving." He said, the description says that, all the other members of the Kingsguard went to draw their swords, and Selmy stilled them with a look. He just looked at them like, "Don't even think about it." Because it's not until Selmy has walked, he says he takes the long way out of the hall, and because there's no tapestries, the noise is bouncing off the chamber, so you can probably hear him walking the whole way down. And it's not until he leaves that Joff decides that he wants Selmy seized because he's possibly making plots with his uncles. And I was like, literally 3 minutes ago, he was the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. When did you think he had time to be making these plans with your uncles?
But he did come up with the Stannis slam, which is like, that was an interesting one.
Yeah.
I mean, he must be aware of the rumors, I guess.
Yeah.
Joffrey twigged to, but I thought it was interesting that he did wait till he was out of the room before saying it, and when he said it, nobody made a move. Right. And then he had to shout it at them, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, we'll go get it."
It's not until Janos Slynt, the new guy, is like, "I'll step up for you. My gold cloaks will seize him." And I thought, I wouldn't want to pull that duty.
No. And if I was Janos Slynt, I would send 2 of my most expendable men,
right?
And then when they don't come back, just say, "We tried."
We tried. So I wondered, I think it's primarily because they want Jaime to be the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, but I also, if you think about how high Janos was raised, and all the way to being given a spot on a small council, that's quite the reward. I wondered if maybe any of this with Barristan Selmy could have stemmed from his hesitation when Cersei asked him to seize Ned when they were in the throne room earlier. I don't know.
Yeah, good point. No, yeah, I think that probably was the final nail in the coffin. I mean,
yeah.
If he'd pulled his sword and attacked Ned Stark at that point, they might be like, "Okay, good, we still, But this guy showed moral ambiguity about fighting for us.
Yeah, right.
We don't want that.
Yeah, and they're doing their best to eliminate anyone who isn't...
Any doubters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the Hound takes his spot on the Kingsguard, but he refuses to be knighted.
Yeah.
We've noted before that he does not like the hypocrisy of knighthood.
Yeah. primarily because of his brother. He knows what a
Right.
monster his brother is, and he knows his brother took the vows and was had the ointments and all that jazz, and yet he's a monster.
Yeah. So Sansa makes her case, and it does seem to work. Joffrey softens his heart, and he says that, yep, as long as he confesses, then we can show mercy. But if he doesn't, we won't.
Yeah, you have to take. You have to be taking Joffrey at his word here.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, but at least getting that from Joffrey is a start,
right? Yeah.
Pycelle is, he's firmly in the let's get rid of Ned camp. He thinks treason is treason, or at least that's the line that he keeps spouting. And he said before that he thinks Sansa should be got rid of because she's,
traitor's
from the
seed.
same seed. Exactly.
Yeah, and I have to keep reminding myself when he's so visceral in his reaction about Ned and his treason is that it's very likely he doesn't know the truth that Ned was correct, that Ned was correct.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I agree with you. I think you're absolutely correct. If I took the 23andMe results of Joffrey's parentage to Pycelle and showed him chapter and verse that he was the son of Cersei and Jaime Lannister, Pycelle would not change his reaction or behavior in any way.
Yeah, especially while the Lannisters are in power here.
He is a sellout of the First Order. Guy.
But I noticed that Sansa used the same excuse that you said you would have used if you were Ned. Blame it on the broken leg. The delirium from the broken leg.
I've read this book before. It is possible that was a reminder, something I remembered. I know there's very few examples of that to date, but perhaps that one did come back to me.
But she could have thrown in the whole. He didn't send Loras Tyrell with the group to take down the mountain. That because she also
clinching argument must have been out of his skull.
He didn't even send Sir Loras.
So, what about background? What do you got?
So one of the...
Oh, you got some good background here. I'm excited.
Yeah, just one...
You've been busy while I've been talking.
Well, it's... you'll have such interesting things to say that I just let you talk while I'm writing.
For sure.
Earlier, Simon thought he was listening to this week's episode and discovered he was only listening to his track of this week's episode. And he was like, wow, this is really great stuff.
I would like to say that I did stop listening after no more than 6 minutes.
He didn't notice anything was missing, though. That's the...
It seemed much more sort of condensed humour, sort of like... I mean, there were some literal pauses where nothing happened, but in between that, it was just funny.
That's good stuff. So maybe we'll just put out Simon's track, and we'll see if it gets more listeners. I'll just write things, and you can say them.
Let's put out the tracks separately, and let's see who gets the most downloads.
Competition. I'm pretty sure it'll be you. We all know when these mics go hot who the star is. So one of the kings, Barristan Selmy says, I served under 3 kings. I served under Jaehaerys, Aerys, and then Robert. And so I wanted to talk about Jaehaerys, the second Targaryen. He was the 16th Targaryen king to sit the Iron Throne. Now, we've mentioned a Jaehaerys Targaryen before, but that is Jaehaerys the Conciliator, the first Jaehaerys, who was the 4th king to sit the Iron Throne. This Jaehaerys is the 16th king to sit the Iron Throne. He was the second-born son of King Aegon V and Queen Betha Blackwood. Aegon V, of course, is Egg from the Drunken Egg series. Jaehaerys was the father of King Aerys II Targaryen and his sister Queen Rhaella Targaryen, and the grandfather, obviously, of Rhaegar, Viserys, and Daenerys. Jaehaerys was a clever and amiable guy, but also sickly and suffering from numerous ailments starting in his youth. Now, Jaehaerys' father, King Aegon V, wasn't a fan of the Targaryen incestuous marriages and was determined to put a stop to the custom. So he arranged a betrothal between Jaehaerys and Celia Tully, the daughter of the Lord of Riverrun. Unfortunately for Egg, Jaehaerys had been of a more traditional frame of mind and fell in love with his sister, Princess Shira. She had similar feelings toward him. And when Jaehaerys' older brother, Prince Duncan, broke his betrothal to the daughter of Lionel Baratheon and married a common-born girl known as Jenny of Oldstones, Prince Jaehaerys and Princess Shira followed suit. They broke their betrothals and married each other. In 244 AC, their son Aerys was born, followed by Rhaella about 2 years later. Jaehaerys pulled the old do what I say and not what I do move, and rather than allowing his children to marry for love, he commanded the pair to marry each other, despite neither really fancying the idea very much. But they did marry, and Aerys and Rhaella's firstborn, Prince Rhaegar, was born in the year of 259 AC on the same day that the tragedy at Summerhall took place, which took the lives of King Aegon V and his oldest son, Duncan. That left Jaehaerys next in line for the Iron Throne. And despite being only 34 years old, his reign, unfortunately, was a short 3 years. Not a lot happened during his reign. The most notable was the War of the Ninepenny Kings, and that was a conflict between a group from the Free Cities set on conquering the Seven Kingdoms for the last remaining Blackfyre pretender, Maelys the First Blackfyre. Now remember, Blackfyres are descendants of Aegon IV, legitimizing his bastards.
Right, Aegon IV, the Aegon before Egg.
Right, exactly.
Right, yeah.
Aegon the Unworthy.
Yeah.
It was Ser Barristan Selmy who killed Maelys Blackfyre in single combat, pretty much ending the war. It's said that Barristan cut a bloody path through the Golden Company to reach Maelys. Due to his delicate health, Jaehaerys was considered weak by many, but most believed he ruled well during his short reign. Unfortunately, in 262 AC, after barely 3 years on the throne, King Jaehaerys II Targaryen died after a short illness, complaining of a sudden shortness of breath at the age of 37.
Well, thanks. That was good work. So comparison with the television show, this is very similar because it's not a very long scene in the book. It's easily captured in the TV show, so it was. She arrives and the herald is already speaking. So by implication, we miss the list of people who have to come to King's Landing to swear fealty.
Yeah.
Slynt does get the Harrenhal, but he does not get a seat on the small council.
Okay.
Selmy's firing is almost word for word. The Hound does not get promoted to the Kingsguard. That doesn't happen.
Oh, interesting.
At least not in this scene.
Okay.
Cersei joined in the critique of Sansa's plan in the book, but she doesn't say anything in the show. She lets the lackeys speak for her.
Wow.
Pycelle, notably.
Lackey number one.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, otherwise, and that ends episode 8. I think is episode 8 ends with Sansa on her knees before the Iron Throne, saying he will about Ned. Yeah.
So we've got 2 episodes left. We are really wrapping up this book here.
Yeah, I tell you. So the pedantry. I alluded to this earlier. If Lady Went had been called on to pledge her loyalty, giving her castle to Janos Slynt seems a tiny bit premature. If she comes down and says, "Oh, my king, thank you so much. It's great to see you." Lady Went.
You see, the thing is this.
Didn't think you'd come.
She's like, well, I'm going to be heading home. I've got a long drive to Harrenhal. She's like, well, it might not be as long as you think.
But then this leads me to pedantry that I should have put in the last episode, which is Lady Went, if you remember, she ceded Harrenhal to Tywin's army without a fight because she just didn't have the men to fight. If she did that and she said to Tywin, "I'm ceding Harrenhal to you because I don't have enough men to fight you," if you're going to give up without a fight, you could be more diplomatic than that.
Right.
You could say, "Thank God you're here. I've been looking forward to your visit for such a long time."
Yeah, roll out the red carpet, have the trumpeters out there, wine and cheese.
Exactly. But knowing now what we know, she probably did the right thing. I mean, she'd already lost Harrenhal.
Right, yeah.
She didn't even know it. So, news and notes. Just serious one for a moment. McKelly and I have a mutual friend who's had and also a friend of the pod, because he has been a listener.
That's right, yep.
For us. His name is Tony, and he's had a very scary medical diagnosis, and we wanted to give him a shout out and wish him all the very best.
That's right. You got this, Tony.
To him and his family. Yeah. Next episode will be our 1 year anniversary. So you know us, we like to. What do we like to do, McKelly? How do I finish that sentence? We like to mark these milestones with something special. So McKelly I told you, McKelly is the one with the ideas. He's had the great idea. We're going to do a special episode like we did for the 50th, which will be between normal episodes, where we're going to listen back to episode 1 and Mystery Science Theatre 3000 over the top of it.
Yes.
With our observations about how stupid we sound.
Not even episode 1. Our first run at episode 1.
Oh, is that what we're going to do?
The one from
like
the very first one that we tried.
So we never published
No.
it? This was just... Oh, man. I didn't realize you were going to go that far.
Yeah, I thought that would be more fun for our listeners. It was so bad.
Oh. Well, we're going to do something. There'll be a discussion about this because I might be too embarrassed. You may have gone too far.
Oh, man. I worry, sometimes I think about our early episodes, like the prologue and, the first handful of episodes, and I think, how do we have any listeners that keep going? How did they make it this far?
We should put a sign on the website like, please start at episode 10. Here's what's happened.
One episode where we just explain everything in the previous 9 episodes.
It gets better.
All right, shall we wrap this up?
Please. So Joffrey requires half of Westeros to come and pledge, maybe more than half of Westeros to come and pledge fealty to it.
Yeah, it's a long list, that's for sure. The question is how many will show up, Yeah. And what happens when they do show up?
Right, because some of them are being invited to their death.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, are they going to show up, pledge fealty, and then leave? Kat certainly didn't think so when she was advising Robb. Yeah. She says, you go down there, you're never coming back.
Especially not if you have to take Rickon with you. if they want you to bring Rickon, they've only got one thing in mind, which is to get rid of the Starks en masse.
The extinction of the Stark family, if that's the case. But true to his word, Joff both punishes the disloyal and rewards those who are true. Janos Slynt got a huge reward. Of course, I question the legitimacy of the reward. It's a huge burden as well, and I don't know that someone who's basically coming from common birth will be able to successfully be the Lord of Harrenhal.
You think this is just a piece that they give to him for now, and eventually they'll sweep him off the board and they'll use that piece again for something else?
Yeah, I think it does a lot like you said. It says, hey, if you're with me, I don't care if you're a commoner. I'll name you Lord of Harrenhal. That's how I roll. But if you're against me, I'll imprison you in my basement. Just come check out Ned Stark.
Sad to see Selmy leave, just to give Jaime a higher role.
Yeah.
The Hound's promotion. I'll give the Hound this. He's probably quite good as a bodyguard. Probably better than the other 5. Certainly.
Right.
Certainly. So Barristan Selmy revealed his true thoughts on them.
He did.
That
He's
could
like,
take all 5 of them.
You guys have been my brothers, but now you're not anymore. So now I'm going to let you know how I really feel. And they laugh at him. Sansa says we didn't mention that. I don't think that came up in the summary or discussion, did it? That he says, I'm a knight, as he's taking off his cloak and everything. And Littlefinger says, apparently a naked knight. And everybody laughs, including his previous, just up to a few moments ago, brothers. And Sansa thinks that's got to be the hardest part, is his former brothers laughing at him. And that's harsh, man. I mean, like I said, he's a national treasure in Westeros. And now, like I said this earlier also, but most of his achievements were done for the Targaryens. So I guess the Lannisters really don't care about the achievements he'd done for the Targaryens so much.
He kept Robert alive for 18 years as king.
That right there
Robert
alone
seemed to be on exactly. He was on a suicidal path from the moment he took the office.
Pretty much, yeah. Can we believe Joff and Cersei that if Ned confesses to lying, he'll be shown mercy?
Let's hope so, because I think Sansa's done all she can here.
Yeah,
she's given him a possible out. Can Ned bring himself to lie?
Right. Yeah. Can he do it? That's
he hasn't shown much of that in the past.
no. And what will Mercy look like? Will he be released and be able to retain his lordship of Winterfell? Will he be released but lose his titles and just be stripped to nothing? Or will he be sent to the wall? What does Mercy look like in Joffrey's eyes? He didn't specify that.
The one I don't think can happen is being stripped of his titles, because if you strip him of his titles and let him go, he goes back north. He's welcome back in the north as the Lord of the North, you know?
Yeah.
They're too loyal to the Starks up there for that to matter to them.
Yeah, I guess so.
But maybe being sent to the wall.
You know, if they came to some other lord, like an ambitious lord, and said, "Hey, we want to make you the Lord Paramount of the North and Lord of Winterfell," it might be like, sure, I'll take it.
All right, that's one you've turned, but every other one will be like, I don't like that guy for what he's just done, and here's Ned Stark back.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Might be hard for that person to keep hold of the North, I think.
Yeah.
That's just what I think. All right, let's sign off. As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And if you like what we're doing, please consider leaving us a rate or review on iTunes or anywhere else that you can leave a rate or review. If you don't have time to leave us a review, we understand, but if you could slide that finger all the way across to 5 stars, we'd certainly appreciate that.
We certainly would. All right, thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.